The key to it all is surrender. The key to it all is surrender. What we're talking about, surrender who you used to be, surrender your old identity, surrender the way you used to govern, the way you used to do business, things like that. Just surrender to that there may be something more, there may be something greater. There is something greater that God is calling you to.
A previous conversation opened the door. Today, we're inviting both voices to the table. Benita Williams is the author of The Sustainable CEO, equipping leaders to move from burnout to overflow through rest, clarity, and stewardship. A.M. Williams coaches founders with the leverage leader approach, helping them create capacity and margin by building systems that scale. We'll explore how spouses lead together without losing their marriage, how values become your operating system, and the habits that sustain profit-first growth. This is what it looks like when leadership and marriage both thrive. Bonita, A.M., welcome to Seek, Go, Create.
Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much for opening us. We are excited to be here.
Indeed.
We are recording this on a Saturday morning, and it's a crispy time of the year, fall, which is a great time. I think it'll be releasing around that time, maybe close to Thanksgiving, actually. There's nothing that people in the leadership and coaching space love than on a Saturday morning getting together and talking about this stuff. Am I right, Benita?
You're absolutely right. That,
Some people be like getting ready for their football
Yeah.
games and stuff like that.
It's what
But
we do.
we're going to talk about the stuff that we love. So we've had Bonita before, and I actually listened to your episode this morning, Bonita. We'll put links so people to circle back.
Awesome.
But A.M., give us a quick intro, man. Tell us a little about you.
Well, the work that I do is a very interesting and unique work. It's called in identity architecture and expansion, which my specialty is in governance. And if I could just put that in real layman's terms so we could talk like ground level, I help
Thank you. I appreciate it. We need some simple explanations.
what I believe my calling and what I'm called here to do is to help leaders become who their next level requires so that they can carry what they're being called to. So we do that in the realm of leadership, life, and legacy. And so a lot of what you'll hear from me today is in governance and how that relates to stewardship. Bonita and I, we both approach leadership through the lens of stewardship. We just do it from two distinct different angles where they come together and help the leader to grow in governance and ultimately become who their next level requires.
Yeah, and the conversation that Bonita and I had, I guess it was a few months ago. Time sort of
Yeah.
merges all together. I don't know if it's when you get to a certain age or just the way life is moving along. I felt I was inspired. That might be a good word to say, just by the heart and the story and things like that. And one of the things, and I want to go ahead and dive into it now, and when we get your perspective on it, then I'm going to bounce back to Bonita, is that she brought up how this word caregiver and all fit in with her leadership journey. And part of it was, it seems like she's caregiver just wherever she goes, me and take care of me all over the place. Can you give a little bit of background to your story to put it in context, just the short synopsis, because I do want us to get into some leadership and discussions, but give the perspective of where you're at. Those watching the video now see you're in kind of
I'm in a therapy bed.
hospital bed situation. Therapy bed, yeah, which actually looks, I'm not saying this lightly, it looks comfortable, but still there's a reason for it, probably not super exciting, but give a little background for
So
us.
I was diagnosed incomplete paraplegic in like 2000, year 2000. And in that process of having a surgery, I ended up contracting a deadly staph infection. Tried to lay it dormant for a few years, and then it came to the surface and caused my body to implode in several different places. And in that process, I did a lot of acute wound care, had to be in the hospital for a long period of time. In 2007, I faced a situation where the doctors told me that if I didn't have a specific surgery, I'd be dead in 10 days. I'm still here today. And sometimes there's the part of me that's like, want to go back to them and say, hey, you're seeing dead people. But really, ultimately, it's God's glory that I'm here today. But it was in that process, that in that hospital bed, he told me something in my life could be leveraged to create something that I want. And in that period of time since then, I literally built my business from a bed-bound condition in the hospital. Um, I went on for literally 13 to 15 years after that, coaching, training, doing leadership trainings and things of that nature from a bed-bound condition. I do have a condition of incomplete paraplegia and decided to put it all in a book that I'll be releasing later this year or next year called How to Make It to the Top When You Can't Take the Stairs. It speaks to identity, expansion, and the importance of operating from your divine design. And so Bonita has been extremely instrumental. First of all, the love of my life. And if I get too caught up in her, this podcast is going to take a far left. But she has been a gift.
Let's keep it PG. Let's don't
Yeah.
get too saucy.
But she's a gift from God. She's an angel. She has assisted me. And while there are a lot of things that she does physically, the support in my own identities, the support reminding me of who God created and called me to be and to carry out and do the things. In fact, the only reason why I'm coaching today is because of her. I'm coaching because of her, the things that she led me to. And ironically enough, the material that she had gave me, it just kept feeding. It kept feeding me and feeding me. And she gave me a book and I read the book and it had a number in it. And I reached out to the office that was in the book and I got the owner. And she put me on a path and led me to a relationship that I've carried and developed for many, many years from that. And so this whole path of coaching and things of that nature was something that she helped to awaken within me. And it's been an amazing path. So when we think about the dynamic of caregiving, it's not just about physical support, because if you just look at it from that angle, it could be very burdensome. It can be that. And I'm not trying to make light of it. I know I'm a tough case to deal with, but at the same time,
I sense that in you, A.M. I sense that you'd be tough.
yeah, tall glass of water, but tough to deal with at the same time. So it's a beautiful piece because the balance and how, what she does for me and then what God allows me to do for her and how she supports me, which is tremendous. She is truly indeed the arc frame that's keeping me up like this. But at the same time, it's just been amazing because to see how God turns around and allows me to support her and what it does. And it's him. Because I'm like, man, Bonita's completely above my pay grade. I didn't even have the sense of mind to be able to ask for God for something like her. And what she's given me has been life-giving and life-changing. But it's been a journey.
We interview. It seems like we lean in, maybe it's just what we attract. A lot of guys, kind of like us that talk a lot and run our mouths. And it's a fairly common theme. A few things are common. Number one, everybody's on this unique journey with their own struggles and challenges and things like that. We love to lean into that. But there's another thing that's in common. It's like every guy, who went way up the food chain with their spouse. It's like every single time, Benita asked earlier, says, oh, I thought Glory might be joining us on this call. Maybe we did put that in the email or something. It's like, well, yeah, we would have been glorified had she been on here because I went way up the food chain too. So congratulations on that. Benita, I want to come back to something on A.M.'s. I want to drill down on something I want to ask him about his pre-2000 life in just a second, but tell me, respond, I guess, to what he said, because I believe words are powerful.
Yes.
And life and death is in the power of the tongue.
It is.
And to hear a couple, either male or female, speaking of their spouse in the way A.M. did, it just is nourishing.
He knows how to put a smile on my face.
I want to hear your response, but I'd love to hear a little bit about how y'all connected because, I know that you had a spouse that passed, and at some point along the way y'all met. He was obviously in a position where he's in roughly now, I think, at the time y'all connected. So tell me a little bit about that. But then I do want to go back. There's some things I want to ask about identity
Mhm.
prior to 2000 for AM.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the biggest things about our relationship is that we were friends before anything else. I met him actually doing the work that I was doing with the nonprofit that I was with. We were helping people who had disabilities in the community with advocacy and independent living skills training, things like that. And so he actually became one of our consumers at the center. And so I got to really know him, know about, his story, his backstory, things like that. And he's just a really cool person, and we became friends. And so our friendship has been over the span of over 20 some years. Just started out as a friendship and grew from there. I went through a divorce with my first husband. And after that, our relationship blossomed from there. But when I met he was already, living the adjusted lifestyle in terms of being a wheelchair user, trying to get access to services and supports in the community. So, I didn't know him prior to him having a disability. And so it was basically just helping to navigate the process of change for that. And then also just making sure that he knew certain resources and things like that were available. But what he mentioned about introducing him to different books and things, he always came across as a person that, could really, he just has a way with words. I told him he's very influential, has a way with words, things like that. And has he ever thought about, coaching or doing something in that lane? And so that's kind of how that process began. Just started introducing him to certain material that I was reading at the time, certain coaches that I was following at the time, and mentors and things like that. And so that just kind of opened up the world of coaching and mentorship for him. With anything that AM does, if he is truly committed to it, he is going to devour it. He's going to take it in and literally devour it. And so that's what happened. He just kind of found his niche. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt. I mean, I was sitting there listening to him, and I'm going, dang, man, AM sounds
Yeah.
like Barry White to me. Good gracious. I mean, he could just light into a song and I would be swooning. I can tell you, man, I'm going, good gracious.
He
I
does. He
feel like
has
I'm
a
talking to
cute.
Barry White. That may not be, some people may not know that reference.
Yeah,
Good gracious.
absolutely.
I want to dig a little bit because I love the love fest we're having here, but I want to dig into some principles. Tell me what your life was like pre 2000. I don't know what age you're at now. I don't know what age you were then. Maybe you could share that. But I actually have some theories about identity that I want us to dig on a little bit. So tell me a little bit about pre 2000 AM.
Oh, wow.
Keep it
Man,
clean.
I feel like I'm living in a different lifetime. I feel like I'm living in a different lifetime. A lot of what I had before 2000, I was walking. I was in another relationship. I was married before. In that period of time, I think there was a lot of searching, a lot of searching, a lot of trying. I came out the industry of finance. I worked in banking. One of my first businesses was financial advisory. I worked in the arena of helping people to, I could tear a mortgage apart, showing people how to restructure, to structure mortgages, provide the necessary asset protection as far as insurance coverage and things of that nature, and helping them to structure things. And I didn't even realize it. But even then, I was operating in some form of governance and like showing people how to structure things, put it in place so that they can scale. But it was a lot of trying to do something that would allow me to be able to get a stronger sense, or a sense of like what being successful in life was, and trying to do what I saw. I was trying to model what I saw to become something more. Um, However, when this condition was introduced into my life, it's like, man, now I'm living, because you get to see something. You get to see something in life that you couldn't see before. And while I'm tall in stature, I'm 6'8", I'm 52 years of age. Um, a lot of what I thought, what I saw in life, it's just like I went behind the veil. Like I saw something, I saw people and I saw situations, and I gained a heart for persons with disability and
Mm.
things of that nature. Cause they was going through things I didn't even know existed in life. And
Yeah.
it challenged me in ways because people, they just had this thing, like they look at you a certain way if you're disabled. And I've had everything from, you know, having people look at me and like talk to me like as though they thought I had some kind of, conditioning and couldn't comprehend and all of that. I pride myself on being very academically astute in certain things, but they looking at me and talking to me crazy. And I'm like, sometimes I can be a cheerleader for foolishness, and I'll engage you in that for a minute just to show you, like, just expose some stuff. But at the same time, I hadn't lost that. I hadn't lost that at all. I just feel like life was totally different, and it's hard to speak on it and talk about it. The one thing that I carry from it, though, is like with everything I've gained, God, I am just so ready to get back on my feet. And I'll
Yeah.
just say this, Tim. It was Bonita that told me when we were friends. This is powerful. She said, God allowed your ability to walk like everybody else to be impacted because he's going to give you a walk like nobody else. And
Mm.
I literally fell
Yeah. That's,
apart. I fell apart when she said that because she spoke to my purpose. She spoke to who he created me to be. And even though I'm still in a chair, I do believe, in me being able to walk again. But I'm walking in so many different ways now. I've touched lives, I've impacted people through my coaching and training and leadership. I've done things that I never thought I would have ever done before. Just
yeah.
grateful for it all. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but it's just like, it's
Yeah.
hard to think about what it was before because my whole life is seen through a lens and it's like, this is what I know.
Yeah. And listen, I believe that God has a way of equipping us regardless of the situations we're in. I think sometimes we have this, and especially in the world we're in today, and this also feeds into leadership, we have this perfectionist mindset of the way things should be, but yet that's not really the world we function and operate in. I spend a lot of time studying first century, the time that the New Testament was written, so that we can have a proper perspective. Many times we take scriptures, we try to apply it to our modern prosperity, perfection mindset, etc. But I'll be specific about it. And before we move on, you seem like someone who was 6'8". You have an athletic feel to you. I don't know if that's correct or not. Maybe I'm drawing assumptions. And many times people's identity, if it's wrapped up in their physical ability, takes a hit when all of a sudden they lose some physical ability. I've spoken to a lot of former pro athletes and all that when they leave sports or whatever, they don't know what to do. And I believe that identity with the ability to walk or hear or see or speak or any of that kind of stuff, if it's lost, can really erode identity until someone like Bonita comes back into your life and speaks into it. But were you an athlete or physically, what were you able to do at 6'8"? Good gracious, you were probably wanting to do some things, maybe, I don't know, or you were just a tall, dark, and handsome dude that, sat around and played cello or something. I don't know.
No, interestingly enough, I think as it pertains to the identity lens, what many
Mm-hmm.
people look at as identity really is more like the dynamic of the lens at which we see ourselves. And we talk about self concept, that's thrown around a lot in the arena of coaching, self concept, how the way you see yourself. And things of that nature. And ironically, God gave me a musical ability, and I was really big in like music and things of that nature. I played sports. I did play some sports, and I was nowhere near as good as I wanted to be. I can tell you when I was in high school, I wanted to be recruited. I wanted to play for Tom Osborne, play for Nebraska, and I wanted to be that. I had that kind of ambition. I wanted to be super successful and have a lot of things, and I just wanted to live life through that lens. Interestingly enough, um, when these things came along, I never saw myself as a person with disability. I never saw myself as limited. I never saw myself as like, well, I'm not just going to go lay up under the bed while there was plenty of people that said you have every reason or excuse if you don't want to do this and that. You've gone through this condition, and we understand if you don't want to do something more. I never saw that. In fact, I didn't learn how to swim until after I became disabled. I never got on a plane until after I was disabled. There were so many things. I've done leadership trainings and things for cohorts. I was part of a leadership group that we did a leadership training for a Fortune 50 company as division out in Southeast Asia. And I did a lot of these things from this place. When Paul talked about his strength being made perfect in my weakness and the stages that I have done, people say, let me tell you something. You might be in a wheelchair, but that thing is not a cripple. It's not a crutch. It's a cape. Because when you talk, that wheelchair disappears. I don't see a wheelchair. And that's all God. That's all God in me operating through me. I can't tell you the amount of people who said, man, I listen to you talk. I have no excuses. I was doing leadership lectures in colleges before I had a college degree. I mean, there were things that have happened in my life that he has shown his strength being made perfect. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have moments. That doesn't mean I don't have times where I'm like, boy, I wish I could do this and I wish I could get up and walk. You don't know if I could do this, boy, what I would do. But I don't think it was ever that God didn't want me to walk. It was just the motive behind what I was wanting to do that was wrapped up in self concept, the ambition behind it. I could prove something. I could perform something. In entertainment, music, you do a lot of performing. You do a lot of that. And so performing was instilled in me. It was instilled. And so now, as I do the work that I do now, it's a lot of that dying, that ambition driven effort, ambition, proving, performing. And you see it so much in business and so much leadership. It's like, everybody's trying to prove something and perform something to get, and I call that ambition driven effort. And we help to shift from that to alignment driven expansion, where it just flows from you. And I'm not talking about like this puff, like, oh, just sit there and like flower child and, thing, all that. No, I'm talking about where you allow God's life in you to flow, and things that you do in leadership is by divine design. So when I think about that period of time and what I was before, I see so much presence improving and trying to perform because I didn't like the way things were. And I was determined I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to be more than that. I'm going to do more than what I've seen. And I'm going to constantly try to, outlive things that I had experienced. Like I was constantly like living like I'm above that now and I'm above, this and that. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, to see how the strength that has come from that and how God uses, people may see me in the beginning in a wheelchair, but they sit and they listen and they're like, man, I can listen to you talk all day. I've heard some of the things that you say, but I haven't heard it through the way that you shared it. And that's what changes everything.
So, a couple of things, and I think we've now caught up. I've allowed him to catch up to the conversations I've had with Bonita. So, we're going to spend the next probably 30 minutes diving into kind of how the two of you have merged your leadership journey and things like that. But one of the things that jumped out at me was I think one of the biggest, I don't want to say struggles, challenges that I see with, we're lumping things. Leadership's a big word. In fact, I think leadership isn't a good word in general nowadays because it throws so many things at us. But we'll say in general, is attempting to be somebody that you're not, attempting to strive for, I believe in stretching, I really do. But I also believe that we kind of have to understand who we are and what we're equipped for. And like you said, and I've talked to Bonita about it, we've got to allow God to be God and for Him to operate in our lives, because leaders listening in can at times start thinking that we're all that. You know, we look at the skills. I mean, you are a great speaker, but you show up in a wheelchair. And that showing up with that vulnerability or something that's perceived as a weakness, I'm not going to say it is a weakness, but it's perceived, opens the door for people to hear things that they need to hear. When Bonita shows up, she shows up and says, I went through a crash. I was not sustainable. I wasn't the sustainable CEO. I was broken. And I think at our root, coaches, leadership, people training, we have this tension between speaking with confidence that can cross over into cockiness or arrogance. I have that issue. I will readily admit it. My wife tells me, when you speak, it really comes across as if you know everything. And I said, I don't know how to change that tone. It is a success tool in our world we're in today, but it's also an Achilles heel. I think many times our superpower can become our weakness. Anyway, but Bonita, let's start tying some things together here. And I'm going to let you kind of lead us here as we go through the next handful of minutes. How has it impacted your leadership journey? Not necessarily the physical, but that mental that we just heard some of that wisdom that he shared. And do y'all just sit around and talk coaching and leadership stuff all the time? Like, who does the laundry? Because
Right?
I wouldn't be able to do the laundry because
Yeah.
my wife and I do that. We do that too. And then just so you know,
You
I
do
do
the
the
laundry,
laundry.
right?
I'm about to. After we finish this up, I'm
There
going to
you
go do
go.
the laundry. But anyway, yeah, share. I mean, anything,
Yeah,
Bonita, let's just kind of roll from here.
absolutely. I would say A.M. helps me with the laundry for sure. So he does have that part to play. But yeah, it's so interesting because hindsight is always 2020. Again, I have to revert back to our friendship days and, and we're still friends today. Let me make sure I say that. But when we were just friends, we would have these dialogues all the time about leadership and about growth. Because I was very much into the whole self-growth and things like that at the time. And so I was reading a lot of self-help books. And, that's the kind of material that I was actually passing along to AM. And we had really good conversation, really good dialogue. I would say probably as we just continue to talk and continue to grow and learn more about each other, we realized that we both had strengths that we could pull on. And so we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. We recognize spiritual gifts, which is very important, to recognize your spouse's spiritual gifts and their spiritual strengths and things like that. And then recognize where your spiritual gifts kick in and how to marry those gifts together. So AM is very much a great orator. He can speak, and he has that gift as a part of his gifting. The word of knowledge is a strong gift that he carries. And so a lot of times I feel like I have my own personal coach. When other people are out looking for coaches and things like that, of course, to grow and things. But I feel like God just gave me my own personal coach because I'm always going to him about ideas, going to him about discussions and just different things that are on my mind and my heart. And we talk it out. He's very big on communication. And so that's a huge one for us as well. It's just our ability to communicate, to really share what we are both feeling or what we're both trying to express and respect what it is that we're both saying. I consider myself somewhat an alpha female. And he's, of course, an alpha male. And so sometimes our differences of opinions will clash, but we have worked it out over 16 plus years now of marriage. So we've learned how to coexist, all that, and allow those instincts to coexist together, but still be able to help each other out. And so I think that's the strength of working together, where you both know what you're after, what you're going for, and you can both complement each other along the journey. He respects what I do and I respect what he does. And we just want the best and to bring out the best in each other. And I think that's the key to, working together in leadership.
Yeah, so I've got a few windows that are up on my computer, and his website says
Yeah.
Coach A.M. Williams. I do think you have coach in your realm, but I don't know that you specifically lean in to that coach. I think when we talked before, I shared with you that at my core, I believe I'm a coach. I've added strategy and things I've layered in, but at my core, I am coach. And I know you and I, caregiver and different things came up in our last conversation. Bonita, tell me, what are the things in what you and AM do that are similar? Like if something, let's just say the two of y'all worked together with an organization or someone, what are the things that are similar? And then what are the things that are different? What is the things that your unique giftings are? And then, I mean, I think we've already said his is probably coach, but tell me more about
Yeah,
that.
so I lean more towards strategist consulting. And so I am very detail oriented. AM sees the big picture. So he's always the visionary. He's always casting vision. He's casting vision for our house. He's casting vision for our business, casting vision for our lifestyle. Like he's the visionary. I'm the person that puts the details to it. I'm the implementer. I like to get down to the details. I like to plan things out. I like to be very specific what it is that I'm doing. And so when it comes to leadership and the work that we do together, oftentimes our work crosses over. It does. It kind of connects and crosses over because, without a vision, of people perish, right? But then you also have to have implementers. You also have to have people who know how to work the vision. And so in leadership, it's a lot about getting people to buy in. And he's great. He's so good at that. He's great at getting people to really buy in. That's the influence and that's the impact whenever you get people to buy into the vision. But for me, it's more about, okay, so we bought into the vision. Now who's going to do the work? What are we going to do? How are we going to move forward in the things that we've already set out to do? And so a lot of our leadership styles complement each other and kind of coexist together. And I think that's the brilliance of how, and only God can do something like that, really, to have it where you're so complementary to each other's leadership styles and things like that. And so that's what I appreciate the most about him is he's always able to give direction. He's always able to lean in and for me to see the big picture, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And for me to be able to realize what the big picture is and not get so caught up in the small details that you end up just a horde of activity, but you're not really moving forward. And you've got to continue to see where it is that you're going. And for him, it's just the opposite. It's more like, cast the vision. What's the big picture? What does that look like? And then leave the details to be delegated.
Gloria and I are very similar. We both on Strength Finders, strategy is our number one Strength Finder out of those 32. But it looks a little bit different. I'm strategy at 10, 20, 30, 40,000 feet, and she's often strategy at ground level. She is organizing the heck out of things, and I'm just like moving bigger organization around and all that. What you mentioned, that you can at times be alpha female. This, I think, is some valuable conversation. I'm about to ask both of y'all's opinion on this because I think it's valuable for leaders listening in. How do y'all handle conflict? When all of a sudden the head's butt or somebody wants to be in charge and sometimes a two-headed monster, we know what that can look like. I'm going to ask you first, Bonita, then I'm going to ask AM. How, and if y'all got an example or whatever, because I do want this to be a real conversation here, because I can see that there could be some challenges here. So how do y'all handle when something comes up that's a conflict?
I would say better these days.
Not very good. Oh
Wasn't
boy.
always the case, but definitely better these days. Again, I think it goes back to something my husband shared earlier, and that is the word governance. When you start to realize who you are, the identity that God has given you, and you start to buy into that, because you actually have to buy into that. I think that what happens with a lot of us is that we hear things, or we may have been told things, maybe prophesied to, we may have gotten dreams about, but are you really bought into who God is calling you to be, like who you really are in Him? And so that identity aspect of it, what I'm learning through my husband's teaching and sharing is that there are certain things that I'm really, really good at. I'm confident in, and I should be the one to lead in that capacity. And then there are other areas where he's really, really good. He's solid. He's called to it. It's what God has put in him. And so I yield to that. I yield to what it is that he's very good and very strong at. I think the more we start to buy in and we stay in our respective places and spaces, it helps to merge or bring together those leadership styles so that you can resolve conflicts in an amicable way. And that's kind of how I see it today. Hasn't always been that case, but today we're getting better at it because I believe we're both being respectful of the areas that we've been called to lead in. So that's how I would sum it up.
Well, if we said, "Oh, we never have conflict," that would be some kind
Oh
of
yeah.
fancy world. People that are growth minded, we're
Oh yeah.
moving forward, we're doing things. All right, AM, I'm going to ask you the same question, and there is only one right answer for you, but I'll allow you to say something different. And it is the way we handle conflict is
Yeah.
she's always right. I'm wrong, and I just yield. How do y'all deal with conflict? How do y'all work through things?
I'll add a little humor to this, and maybe it's a joke that leaders can be able to take with them. If you can handle it now with discretion, if your relationship can't handle it, don't do it. But a long time ago, a man asked me, "Who wears the pants in your household?" And out of ego, I said, "I wear the pants." And I said, "Well, who wears the pants in your household?" He said, "She does. I just tell her what pair to put on." Okay. Governance, man, is tough because when you're so used to being the manager, when you're so used to being the one, oh, well, this is what's needed. Men take a lot of pride in that, as a leader. I do what I want to do. This is my business. This is what I want to do. This is what we're going to do. Is this how, and I'm going to be the manager of this whole situation. Well, my wife is exceptional at management. Okay. She's an exceptional manager, but me willing to let that go and govern is the key. See, so many leaders feel like they got to do everything to accomplish anything. When you learn not to just delegate a role, but empower authority, that's the difference. Moves from you do what's in your design. It's not that one person is better than the other. It's you have a design. You have a design in which you do things, and so you lead differently. You got to appeal to whose strengths are in what. And when you learn how to govern in life, you learn how to govern in leadership, you learn how to govern in legacy, you learn how to do these things. It really, everybody gets to reach their full potential.
Mhm.
So as I began to learn more about governance, then I'm able to say, okay, this is her design. So I have to relinquish and say, okay, I'm going to empower her to be able to do this. And that's by putting structure
That's good.
in place so that she can now, okay, I got this part. Now I can take it from here and be okay and let that go. But that takes growth into it. People hold on to things like their children, they never want to leave the house. You never let them reach the maturity that they need to grow in governance themselves because you're always holding on to something.
Good.
And so when you learn how to release and say, okay, that's what you're great at. And so therefore, You have to operate according to your design. I have to operate according to mine. And then as we grow in that, then we grow in how we flow and conflict is minimized. But I would also like to add something to what Bonita was saying earlier. A coaching term that I believe really helps to really support each other is holding space. Bonita doesn't have to be super to be my wife. She operates supernaturally, but she doesn't have to be perfect. She can have her moments. And so when she's having her moments, for me to hold space for her and let her have that moment and then share what God gives me to share with her, not to look at her and say, look, this is what's wrong with you. This is what's wrong, this, but hold space. And then for her to do the same for me, because I have moments. She's like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna let you have your moment. Let you do that. But then we got to come back because again, your divine design is too important for what God has for us to do. And so as we begin to come back to that, and if we begin to look at leadership as like, my divine design is too important for me to not be in it and let this organization do what God created it to do. If we don't, that's the biggest thing. So that's why it has to start with identity. If you don't understand your divine design, then you're constantly going to be stepping on somebody else's toes and trying to do everything that they're doing. You need to be the hero. You need to be the one to save the day. You got to do everything for anybody to accomplish anything. It's just not, that's not sustainable. And it's definitely not scalable. So if we don't get that part right, we miss everything. And that's just alignment. When I operate according to my divine design, she operates according to her divine design. Where there is unity, he commands the blessing. And so I want to be in unity. I want to be that. I don't want to just take down and, just to get along and tolerate things or whatever. I share what I feel about it and then we go on. But at the same point of time, it doesn't mean it has to be conflict. It doesn't have, my greatest conflict is not with my wife. My greatest conflict is within. My greatest conflict is fighting who I was versus who God created me to be. When I work through that conflict, and sometimes she gets caught up, and she's the object of like misfire, and she gets that a lot, but it's because I'm wrestling between who I was and who God created me to be as it pertains to how I lead in my household, lead in my business, lead in life. It's not her. Oftentimes, it's not her, it's me. And so understanding that, that's key.
I will say though, we have not yet figured out, when it comes to what we're having for dinner. We have not yet figured out. This
you
is
can't
not
get them
working.
all,
How to
man.
handle that.
This is not working.
You can't get it out. You can't win them all.
When it's,
Certain things just forever, ever there. It's like,
we haven't been able to figure that part out yet.
I could fast for 3 days in a row. So if we're going to eat, it's up to you, sweetie. We'll figure it out. It's beautiful. I love what you said. There's a couple things popped to mind. I am not one that uses profanity. I grew up in the Bible Belt and it never comes out of my mouth. And we're a clean show here, but I'm going to bleep myself out because there's a phrase that someone brought up to me recently that is sometimes you just got to let that bleep go. Mm-hmm. That's one of the first things that came to my mind. The second thing was the word stewardship. And Bonita, I'm going to throw it over to you in just a minute because I think you and I skirted this the last conversation, but I think it ties in with this. You said something that, if you're not sustainable, you can't scale. The unfortunate thing in the world we're in today is so many people are hustling after scale when they're not sustainable, and we see the results of it. We're building a company right now that's in quite the growth phase. And part of some of our roles is to create some sustainability, some foundation, some structure, etc. But the biggest thing that you said there, and I think it ties into stewardship, that I'm coming to you in just a second, Bonita, so get ready. I think you worded it as best as I've heard on what our journey's really all about. And that is identifying what we were created for, clearing out all the junk and admitting the things we weren't created for. Because often what we will do is we will get in this mode of trying to be everything for everybody. Sometimes that fits into the caregiver role too, Benita, that we try to be all to everyone. And we do that in leadership roles and business roles and all too. But I really do believe that part of our journey, the leadership journey, that's one of our subtitles here at Seek, Go, Create, is coming to terms with what God created us for. And also what he didn't. And I believe that's part of stewarding what the gifts, talents, when we connect with a spouse, identifying their gifts and talents, merging those together, not conflicting where we can, and all of that. So, stewardship, let's kind of tie up with that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the sustainable CEO before we wrap up here.
So when it comes to stewardship, a big part of stewardship is stewarding well what God has given you, the identity that he's given you, who he's called you to be, your assignment, the mantle you carry. All of these things are directly related to and tied to stewardship. We are to steward well the gifts, talents, skills, abilities, the things that God has given us in our domain. That's what he did whenever he created man. He gave us a domain. He told us to take possession, to subdue, to replace, to cover the earth, to multiply, all these things. And so we are to steward well that which God has given us. And so stewardship is a big key. And even in business, you want to learn how to go from what I call ownership or self-effort or performance that my husband was talking about earlier to stewarding, to understanding that, you're not necessarily owning everything, but you're managing, you're stewarding what God has allowed and given you to do. And that's a big responsibility. So yes, stewardship is definitely directly connected and related to how we see ourselves, the identities that we have in Christ, and what we're here to do, and being able to govern it.
Yeah, I think you said something in there. I'm going to pull out just a little bit more, and that is when we start thinking we own and control. Last time you and I talked, we talked about control. When we get confused and believe that we are in control, which also means we kind of push God down to a lower level. He might be someone that we honor and respect and acknowledge, but we don't submit. That's me. That's my thing. Probably a lot of leaders listening into, and also a lot of relationships, and don't understand that we don't own this business and this company. We don't own these skills and talents. We don't own this spouse that he blessed me with. We don't control it or own it. We steward it. And we have to give it back when we're done in a better condition than when we received it. That's the thing that I think is a challenge for a lot of us. We think, man, you know what? I gotta make this better and all that. So I think that fits into this word we're going to finish up with called sustainable. Your book, Sustainable CEO, which I appreciate Sabrina and y'all sending it over my way. I think you sent it after our last conversation, though. Is this something you wrote since then?
Yes.
Wow. Well, you are cranking it out here. This is the subtitle. I love subtitles because I think often they tell us more than the titles. Unlocking the Divine Overflow Sequence for Leadership, Alignment, and Legacy. Those are some big words there. Tell me about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sustainable CEO is a book, I believe, just download from heaven. That's what I say. That came to me as I was doing research, basically, for just understanding more about leadership, understanding more about how God wants us to align with our divine design, and then the legacy that we all desire to leave, right? And so as I dug into this, God really spoke to me, and he was like, we don't have to miss the mark on this. We don't have to guess, how to be in alignment and how to have sustainable growth and even scalable growth. We don't have to miss the mark on it. There's actually a divine design, there's a divine pattern, I should say, or sequence of how we can sustain alignment so that it reaches the leadership levels that we are aspiring to and also leaves the legacies that God wants us to lead and we want to lead. In doing so, there is a sequence that He has given me that's spelled out in the book. It's basically 7 steps. They're not all linear steps. You can find yourself in any one of these 7 steps, but the idea is that there's this cyclical cycle that we go through to continue to sustain what it is that God has given us to. That sustainability is tied to stewarding. It is the mantle of stewardship and how we are to govern our lives and govern the things that God has given us. And so that's what I talk about in the book, those 7 steps to how leaders can do that.
Yeah, and I read it. It's actually it's a good read for a leader because it can be quick, it's concise, but it's got good content, not a lot of fluff, which I like. Hey, AM, I'm gonna let you do something kind of unique. You got 30 seconds, so you got to be quick here. I want you to do a quick commercial for her book. I want you to tell people why they should read Bonita's book. You haven't written yours yet, so we're not going to let you promote it. You got to write a book first before we promote it. Do a real quick commercial for her book. Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh.
I have written a book. It's just my new one. I had to make it to the top when you can't.
Yeah.
This is not out yet.
Sure.
But as far as the sustainable CEO goes, if you are a leader that is truly, we talk about, we want to make impact. We want to operate with influence. And yes, we do want to increase income. I've never come across a business owner that said, oh no, I don't need to make any more money. The first key to it is that you got to understand your divine design, and you have to learn how to steward, and you have to learn how to sustain. And the way that you're going to do it is you're going to do that through operating as divine design. You really want to understand how to usher in overflow into your life, how to operate in it and let it flow through you. Then you're going to have to learn how to become sustainable. The Sustainable CEO is an amazing read. It's a great reference material, and you want to continue. Don't read it once. Continue to go back to it. Read it often, and it will help you to grow and move you towards governance. Governance is the mature form of stewardship. In this, when you get this divine overflow sequence, you're going to move and mature into governance so that you learn not just how to hold everything together, but to begin to govern it. You don't have to try to make this happen. No, you move away from grind and you learn how to govern overflow. I believe that this is an amazing piece of material. In fact, don't just get it today and allow it to operate in your life. Put yourself on the path to greater governance through the Sustainable CEO.
That's good. Thank you. We'll include some links to your stuff below, but we have to acknowledge Bonita's the star here. We're just bit players in this world. Hey, Bonita, last words from you. Give a word of encouragement to either, I'll let the Holy Spirit lead you here, to either a leader or couples type, since this has kind of had a couples theme to it, someone who might be in a role that they're maybe challenged with some of the things we talked about, just dealing with leadership and all from a couple standpoint. Just real quick word of encouragement that we could finish up with.
Absolutely. Again, I just want to thank you and thank my husband as well for being here with me today. I really appreciate when we are able to get together and have these type of conversations because I believe it just strengthens the body. So thank you so much, Tim, for sharing your platform with us today. I would say this is something I wrote actually in the book, and I just want to just kind of reference it because I think it's fitting for today. The key to it all is surrender. The key to it all is surrender. What we're talking about, surrender who you used to be, surrender your old identity, surrender the way you used to govern, the way you used to do business, things like that. Just surrender to that there may be something more, there may be something greater. There is something greater that God is calling you to. Surrender those old patterns. Surrender is the key. It's the starting point for change. Surrender that ownership if you want to move into stewardship. Surrender having to take responsibility for so much instead of just receiving first before you pour out to other people. That's my caregivers, surrender receiving before you pour out so much. So if we just operate in the words of or in the heart posture of surrender, but just the beginning of the Divine Overflow Sequence, then all these other things shall be added. So it's so fitting for this podcast to be called Seek, Go, Create, because that chapter of the Bible, that scripture where you talk about, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all these other things shall be added. Well, how do you get there? You get there through surrender. And the Sustainable CEO is a book that help you to surrender areas to God that you need so that he can show you how to be more of a steward, and that will lead to being more of a sustainable CEO according to your divine design.
Surrender is good. Yeah. Again, it could also be described as let that blank go. Coach A.M. Williams, thank you for joining us. Coach at heart. Man, what a great sound, great voice, great words, great wisdom that you shared. I appreciate that. And Bonita, great to have you on again. The Sustainable CEO, got a copy right here that they shared with me. For those that are watching, pick that up. And I appreciate this conversation. I love getting couples together that are doing things together. I think the Lord has some projects for you two where you'll be working together more than you currently are, because I think leaders need to hear couples that are working together. So take that for either just a little nugget or prophetic or whatever you want to. We're Seek, Go, Create here. We have conversations just like this every week. We like to go deeper. We like to discuss the things that are really important. As Bonita just said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, from Matthew 6:33. I realized in my life that I was chasing after those things. I had that verse flipped, and we're looking for people here that want to listen in, that know they need to get the order right on that scripture. So thanks for joining us. We've got new episodes every Monday. We're over on YouTube. We're on all the platforms. Keep listening in, commenting. Great things are going. We will see everyone next week. Thanks for joining us on Seek, Go, Create.